Hi there, I'm Michael Hill with Canine Chronicle TV, and I'm here today with Carla and Dani Sanchez of Southport Mastiffs, and we're going to talk about their multiple generation involvement in the sport of purebred dogs. So why don't we start with how Southport originally started?
Oh, it started, both my husband and I came from families that did not allow us to have dogs. We both love dogs. So the big thing was, when we buy our first home, can we buy a dog? And I'm like, of course, I love dogs. That was like, of course. But
no brainer
was, he said a Mastiff, and I didn't know what that was. And so we went to our dog show, and I immediately recoiled, like, no, those are not dogs. Those are small cattle. And they were rolling around. And I remember think about it, it wasn't too long before we had the Jaws movie, like in the 70s. And the dog rolled over and his teeth came out. And I was like, oh my God, that looks like a shark. And our youngest son was 3 or barely 3, but we went to look at other breeds. At the time, I thought a golden retriever was a big dog.
Yeah.
And we wound up coming back. We looked at several breeds, and I had to admit that the Mastiffs, even though they were big, they did seem the most gentle, the most they had things that they did that scared me, like coming over and sitting on my feet and leaning against me. And I was petrified. But we wound up with a Mastiff, and the rest is history.
Were you showing that first dog? Was that part of the...
Oh yes, April 1st, 1983 was our first dog show.
You have not told the best part.
Oh, about the refrigerator?
Yeah, how the money came to get the dog.
Oh my God, tell me more.
So we had bought our first home. That's how we got the Mastiff. But truly, I think my husband only wanted to buy a house to have a big dog in a big backyard.
Why else would you buy a house?
I went into the kitchen and looked around. He went straight out to the backyard. He would immediately spin around, walk past me, and go, "Yard's too small." But I had been saving because I really wanted the side-by-side refrigerator freezer with the crushed ice, because I love crushed ice. So I had a block of money saved for my refrigerator. I never got the refrigerator because I had no idea how much this Mastiff was. I thought $400, that's a lot of money for a purebred dog. He was $1,000, and I was like,
you splurged.
I remember that was my refrigerator money, and my sister and I remember, well, you don't remember because you're too young. There was a chain called Montgomery Ward. They're long gone, but we used both our credit cards so I could buy my refrigerator. And I never did. I don't even think I got the crushed side by side. It was very, very sad.
So my dad.
But you still have the Mastiffs.
Yes. You have crushed ice now, so it all worked out.
I do.
It all worked out in the long run. Yeah. Who were some of the people who were impactful in you getting started in those early years?
Oh, really? Our first friends in Mastiffs were Fred and Shirley Carnett. The gentleman that we bought our first Mastiff from, first of all, we looked everywhere. We had moved from SoCal to NorCal, and we had visited every kennel up there. I put my glasses on because I can't really see you without.
You're good. It looks great.
So we visited with all the breeders up north. We're really invited in. We're really welcome. They all took their time with us, but nobody had a puppy for us. We had to get on big puppy lists. And because we were from SoCal, we were down here for Thanksgiving in 82. Yes. And Joe was always looking through Dog World magazine and all these dog magazines. Dog World. Yeah, I don't even think they're around anymore, but or maybe they are. I think so. And he found a litter in Orange County. And I remember telling him, we can't go over there. It's Thanksgiving Day. He goes, well, I'm going to call him. So the guy led us over, and it was like, is he crazy? It's Thanksgiving. And we go to the front door, we knock, and I thought it was his wife, but it turned out to be his girlfriend. She opens the door all mad, and she goes, just go in the back. And I was like, oh, okay. It's like all enthusiastic. He opens his gates, and here was like a sea. It was a huge litter. They were all fawns and apricots, and I just remember they were massive looking, but they were puppies, so they weren't as intimidating. And we wanted a fawn, and we there was only 2 fawns. One was what we referred to as a honey fawn, which is a more golden tone, and the other one was a silver fawn, which is the more white tone. Mm-hmm. And so we just said we wanted the silver fawn, but we had to leave without our puppy, even though they were over 8 weeks old, because the lady who owned the sire. The sire had passed away, and she had changed her mind, no longer wanted a stud fee.
Got it.
So we had to wait weeks and weeks, and then we drove back up to. Was that the original question?
No, the original question was who inspired you, or who were your first influence?
Who were involved?
Well, what I was trying to say is the guy that was our first breeder, his name is John McLean. He's still around today. I think he's in bull mastiffs, but he had only had 2 litters. So when we wind up eventually getting our puppy, which they drove him up to us, we had just closed escrow on our house. We didn't even have a landline, because remember back then it took forever for them to get you a landline. And he and his girlfriend were driving up to Lake Tahoe to get married in Tahoe, and they brought up the Mastiff. So it was like home service delivery. But we didn't get Silver Fawn because
so you guys interrupted both their Thanksgiving and their wedding?
Yeah. Oh no,
I was just thinking they were
they were happy to come get their $1,000
paid for the wedding, right?
For the wedding. So then what I'm trying to say is we bought our first dog from a guy who was not an established breeder. I've never regretted it. The sire was an English import from England, from the Kisumu line, and the mother was a dam from a very popular kennel, probably the biggest kennel in the United States, which was Deer Run Kennels. So we go to all the shows, and we're meeting all these people, and the first people that really welcomed us was Fred and Shirley Carnett. Sadly, they have both now passed away. And they lived in Placerville, California. We would go up there often and meet with them. And then we met the other people, Dee and Mike Ginsberger, who at the time, Mike Ginsberger had the #1 Mastiff. And we met other people, many people that I'm sure whose names, people have now passed away. Joanne Williams was one of them, and she really helped a lot in the very beginning. Everything was all very friendly and very open. And we always got together, the group in NorCal, under the guidance of Mike Ginsberger of Gulf Mills Mastiff. We all used to go breakfast, lunch after every best breed. It was a lot of fun.
Wow. So there was a real different kind of culture.
Right. It was a real community effort. Everybody loved the Mastiffs, and we went to breakfast together.
I love that.
We were just kind of the little newbies. The sad thing about us was we had a Mastiff who wasn't related to any of them. So we had this odd puppy who was from the East Coast, and the sire was, an import.
English. Yeah.
It was kind of like, I guess we gave the dog that was winning, we gave him breed points. So that part we could.
They liked you for that part, right? So when you were first getting started, were you planning on breeding as well, or when did the breeding program start?
No, never got into breed. Got in it because my husband wanted a show dog, and he wanted to get his championship certificate and put it on the wall. That's all we ever wanted. That was supposed to, but what happened was the dog just became very well known, and people were reaching out to us and telling my husband, we want to use your dog at stud. Of course, his head went like giant head. Like, oh my God.
My dog.
Yeah. And I don't even want to give you the details of the first breeding, but needless to say, my husband thought that they broke his dog. And it was very exciting. And then we went to see puppies, and then the Carnets came over for some reason, I think to breed a beautiful bitch of theirs to our dog. And they were saying, your dog is, because he finished when he was like super young. I don't know, like 12 months old, or it was immature. And they saw him now, and he's like, maybe about 2.5. And they were saying, the dog really looks good. You ought to show him. And we're like, what? And they're like, yeah, you ought to show him. And we're thinking, him? And then this guy, who's in our backyard.
Our pet?
So what wound up happening was, by this point, we had our dog was used at stud by one of the older breeders. And we had taken a puppy back because we didn't want money. We wanted a puppy because we were so excited. Not that we couldn't have used the money, because we could have. It's just
but it was your dog's puppy.
Yeah. And then we got another puppy anyway. We wound up starting off with 4 Mastiffs. And right about that time, we took our dog to a dog show, and it was the Oakland Kennel Club. And I remember standing back, and I remember looking at my dog and just thinking, what? Man, he looks good out there. He's as big as all those dogs, as deep as all those dogs. It's just, there was a ginormous dog there whose name was Patty Gruppetti's dog. And I kind of can't think of the dog's name.
Before Guard?
Oh, it was long before Guard. This is back in the 80s. It'll come to me after this interview, but I remember her saying he's a showpiece, not a show dog. He was giant. And I just remember thinking, wow, the only dog that's bigger than my dog out there is that giant dog. Maynard, I think his name was Maynard. But anyway, when he won, it was like, what?
Wow.
You know, it was, you know, and we didn't handle at the time. Well, the very first weekend out, I was the handler. And I went out there and I didn't know what I was doing. I thought, okay, you walk around the ring, I can do that. Your dog stands still, I can do that. Then you run around the ring, I can do that. But when I came out of the ring, my husband was like, blah, 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 you know, you weren't looking, the judge was looking, you took too long. Blah, 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 blah. Second day I go in, I don't know, was it the second day? I think I went reserve winner's dog. But the third day he went hired a handler. I was really upset with him because that is not.
No, he went past you.
Yeah, he fired me, so to speak. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, you know, we've got this dog and now we're having entry fees and now we got to pay a handler. And it was actually the Carnet's handler, I believe. So I kind of felt good about that because it's like, well, they know, no, they're nice people. They know this person. It just kind of went on from there. And then our dog started winning.
And it just took off.
Yeah. I mean, he started winning, you know, here. We didn't go flying around or driving around. It was just NorCal, Southern California. I really don't even think we went to Arizona back in those days.
Wow.
And it was an exciting year. But at the very end of, I think it was that year, the very end of that year, the number one Mastiff was going to be decided in Florida. And we couldn't go. Even though my husband wanted to go, we could not go because we had just made a big move from Northern California back to SoCal where we were from. And it just wasn't in the cards. And the Carnets, when they were telling us about our dog, we're telling them about how beautiful, her name was Diana, how beautiful their dog, Diana, was. And she wound up being the number one Mastiff that year. It was half the year, it was with a dog named Chumley, I believe, who was owned by Bill Hempel, who was a very old friend of ours, and our dog Byron on the West Coast. And they kind of went back and forth. But in the end, it was Fred Carnet's bitch that was number one Mastiff. But back
so
then,
I thought there was like a lot of depth of quality there.
Yeah, there was. And my husband and I made a habit of we visited a lot of kennels. We would do a lot of our business was new, and we used to do a lot of travel for the business for various beer conventions and whatnot. But every time we traveled, he would always call ahead and make time to visit the Mastiff people back in the East Coast.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was fabulous. It was really got to see the best of both worlds.
I think the last time somebody did that was back in 2007 with us.
Really?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, but there was no internet. There were
I know. Seeing a dog in person is
and
and a family of dogs too, I'm sure makes a difference.
That was awesome. We got to see some of the great dogs. I remember one guy, his name was Charlie Boyer. He had a lion.
Really?
A lion?
A lion with his Mastiff.
A lion with like a dog.
Wow.
All right.
And I'm sure that definitely shaped your perspective as breeders because you were getting outside of your small kind of group in California and seeing what the whole, it's like, you know, when you go to a national and you can see different families of dogs and make those decisions.
True.
What would you say the state of the breed is like now compared to back then?
You know, I get asked this question all the time. Mainly because obviously, I was born in 90. So I have a very interesting perspective because I was almost born at the Mastiff National in 1990.
Almost was.
She was out there showing dogs for some reason.
No, I wasn't. I ran.
No, you ran. Yeah, no. Yeah, no, she did.
One way to start labor.
Yeah, right? So Mastiffs are imprinted into my life, like into my blood. My sister and I always joke around like Game of Thrones, blood of old Valyria. We say we're the blood of the Mastiff.
Yeah.
But this question gets posed a lot. And I would say as much as people, I think, try to say, this, that, I do think there's a very large improvement. I'd say the rears are 100 times better. Mastiffs can move. I felt like they couldn't move back in the day. A lot of high in the rear. Fronts were always okay. More massive now, more bone. I would say it's getting better than it's gotten worse. But what's interesting about it is that it's getting better, but it's like diverging into different looks if that makes sense.
Styles, yeah.
Different styles.
I can answer that question in one word: crippling hip dysplasia. Back
Really?
when we first started, the dogs, it wasn't just hip dysplasia, it was crippling hip dysplasia. The dogs could hardly move. I mean, they could hardly get around the ring. And then there became this group of us who started testing hip dysplasia and getting OFA hip passing hips. And before we got into Mastiffs, that was the one thing, and this is the stupid part about it, that was the one thing someone said: make sure the hips are good. So we made sure that the dog, who was the sire of our dog, had passed his hips. But stupidly, we didn't make sure about the female. We were always blessed with good hips. And then the University of Davis started this whole program, and all the Mastiff people flocked there to get their dogs tested. And they were not charging us. They were just trying to start a program.
Collect data.
Yeah, data. But yeah, the Mastiffs, when you say hip dysplasia now, it's not killing the dog. It's not going to end its life. It's not going to be because people physically cannot carry them. So that is the big health is the big difference.
Yeah. And I'm sure that, because that's something that regardless of whether it's a show dog or a family companion or whatever, with a dog of that size, if they're not able to move, it's like a horse.
Yes.
Wow. So what would you guys say are some of the things that you're prioritizing in your breed currently, as like your breeding program specifically?
Number one always has to be a good temperament. My dogs have generally, through all these years, had very good temperaments. I raised a family with the dogs. I couldn't have a dog that I wouldn't trust a little goofy kid to go out there and open and let the dogs out, or walk in the backyard and get tackled. So for me, it's always been temperament, conformation, and then health. And so we pretty much, we do a lot of testing. Quite frankly, I have basic health tests that I used to do. She goes and runs the gamut of all the testing. I just leave that to her now.
I wouldn't say there's anything specific that we're focusing on. There are things that I'd like to improve, of course, but it's very different because obviously she's been doing this since 1982, that our dogs are at a point where it's less about we need this, we need that. It's more of just consistency and keeping that going. And we kind of been experimenting here and there with like outside dogs, which we don't normally do. But right now I'd say if there was anything that Southport Mastiffs has been, I won't say bashed for, but taken down a notch for, is height. But the Mastiff is supposed to get their height from depth of body, not length of leg. But we have been trying to work a bit on height, I'd say. Next, I'd like to work on feet, but that's
right.
But
well, in the grand scheme of things, if those are the things you're focusing on, like you said, when you have those established foundations, that's a good place to be for a breeding program.
Yeah, definitely. And that, it takes years and it takes being consistent. And I think a big thing that I've found with like the dawn of social media and dogs is that you have these popular studs that are like social media studs. And I think people kind of lose sight of, yes, you're seeing a lot of pictures of this dog winning, but you need to also not get distracted by like the wins, and you really need to focus in on, does my line actually need this dog?
For your line, because just well-marketed dog doesn't mean it's necessarily compatible.
Exactly.
It's a great point. So Dani, when you were growing up, did you like always have this idea that like, I'm going to continue with the Mastiffs, I'm going to do the dogs, and that's what I'm going to do? Or did it take some time to get there?
The way my sister and I grew up is we grew up on 5 acres on top of a hill before the internet. And it was just her and I and a pack of dogs. Like all of my childhood videos are
That's pretty great.
like a pack, and we're just like roaming around, the like bitches are moving us and we're just like going like puppies. So the dogs, they've just always been my whole life.
Companions.
Like they just, I can't even, every single car we've had, it has to do with the dogs. Every single Thanksgiving was at the turkey circuit. Mother's Day, we were at the national specialty. Father's Day was like Bahia Sur at one point. 4th of July was Ventura. So there was no escaping it. However, it's funny because I have 6 older brothers, and
wow.
One of them actually does have a Mastiff now. And I was like,
The oldest one.
We got you. We got you. And then my sister, she does a lot of like the whelping. You can't put me near a litter of puppies. I freak out. I wonder if I'd be better now that I have my own child. And
You would be.
I was raising her and I'm like, wow, it's kind of like a puppy.
Like a puppy.
Yeah, it's nice. But my sister does all of that. But as far as the showing, you know, I'm just kind of a competitive person. I like hands-on things. I used to be a competitive classical singer. I used to play basketball. So I remember going out and it was a friend of ours who's since passed, Anna Mae. I showed her bitch Zonia, and that was in Ventura. And since then, I just kind of started showing, and then they gave me.
You should have seen her out in the ring against her dad. That was something.
Oh,
that was.
You thought she was competitive before.
Oh, it was
really bad. I actually, you know, what's funny is there's this video we talk about in our family. And I found it the other night. It's like Christmas 2005. And I had just made a grand announcement that I was no longer showing dogs because my dad was too competitive and he didn't make it fun and he was being annoying.
Yeah.
Well, Christmas rolled around. My gifts were literally dog show clothes.
I got her swimsuits. They were really cute.
They were cute.
Oh, I got her. And she's sitting there, gift after gift.
I held it together very well. For a 15-year-old getting and my sister was getting like BB and BCBG and like Get clothes. And I'm like melting over here. Like in a damn Steinmart outfit. I'm going to live it. And then my brother got a TV and I have a video of it. He like opens up the box and it was in a Hollister box, which Hollister was like, you know,
the hot thing.
2005. And he opens the box. And he's like, oh no. And I'm like, I have got to go now. And he's like, come on guys, you did this to her. You only got her dog show clothes. I don't know. Did you give me cash at the end there? Like anything? I don't think she did.
I was so
I got.
They were manipulative parents.
So I got wrapped back up into it. And then
we drug her back in.
Well, we had named Eve. And Eve I'm 5'7", and Eve went up. She was the tallest thing we've ever bred. I swear. She's giant. And she was psychotic. And he didn't want to show her.
And I didn't want to show her.
She didn't want to show her. So
Danny,
I'll just do it. Why not? So
your job, right?
I took a long break from showing. I think the last time I actually went into a ring was like, my God, now like 5 years ago. But, you know, we have handlers now. It makes it much easier. But now I'm more involved in like our parent club. I sit on the board of directors for the MCOA. I sit on the journal committee. I'm on the handbook committee. I'm the ethics chair. I think I'm technically in the health committee. I'm in the group, so I help when I can. So that's really...
So the involvement is like widespread.
Yes. And I'd say it probably really took off when my father died. I just couldn't let that legacy go. It needed to continue. And quite honestly, there was like this odd gap of time in Mastiffs before he died, but where they took a hiatus and a bunch of the other top kennels took a weird hiatus, and Mastiffs kind of went a weird way. So now it's interesting. All these older breeders are coming back and trying to like get the type back in there, the movement. So that I've drug her into. I'm like, no, we gotta let people.
You're back, Mom.
We gotta do this. You know,
it's a responsibility. I mean, and it's hard because only certain people are gonna have that depth of experience and that background and those dogs to make that happen. It doesn't just come out of thin air.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, go ahead.
We took a hiatus from Mastiffs, but we were still showing dogs.
Yeah,
somebody asked me, are you guys always only willing to back the underdogs? And I'm thinking, well, what else would I do? The so-and-sos don't need me. The so-and-sos don't need me because you don't
need to be in the boxer ring.
The only high-profile dog we did back was Spirit, the giant schnauzer.
Yeah.
You mean like more?
Yeah, that's
not high profile, but more easily
mainstream.
Easily,
mainstream breed. Yeah.
But everybody else, like Chet, you know, Chet, and then
Vinny, now
Rocket. I mean, we hold a lot of
Clumber.
Yeah, we hold a lot of, like, I don't know if we still hold them, but we at one time we had we broke all the breed records in the breeds that we backed.
Wow. Who were some of the handlers that you used for those dogs?
Oh, Lord.
So the Giant was Taffy
McFadden.
Bill McFadden.
Mhm.
Chet was Susie Oliveira. Jorge on Vinny. Jorge on Rocket. The Clumber. We've pretty much had Jorge and Susie for everything that we've backed that was not a Mastiff, except for Bill and Taffy with the Giant.
Yeah, but it was also Mary Dukes. We had Mary Dukes.
No, well, I mean, non-Mastiffs, but for our Mastiff handlers, I mean, yeah, Mary
Duke. Well, our first handler was
Gretchen. Bruce and Gretchen Schultz were first
Gretchen.
Consistent handlers, and then Mary
Dukes,
and then Pam.
Why am I feel like I'm missing somebody important?
I hope we're not. Sorry if we are. Well, the Pam, then Holly
Leftwich was a young handler for us,
and then Bill and Taffy, and then Jorge and Susie, and now we have Jorge and Susie for our Rocket, and we have Terry
handlers.
Smith for our Mastiff.
And Rocket did very well
this
weekend, huh?
You know, so funny.
Down in Brooksville.
And I have to say this, the Boston Terrier people are amazing.
They are
very so
supportive.
Gracious, so supportive. I have them messaging me, thanking her, you know, thank you so much for like getting, you know, because it's true. And I wish people would recognize this across all breeds, is that when one dog in your breed does well, that opens the door for your breed,
entire breed,
to just grow. And the Boston Terrier people are very, very gracious. Not to say the Mastiff people aren't, but it's like unworldly. They bought us dinner when we were in Florida a few years ago. They just, my God, they
gracious.
Send her things like she has all this Boston stuff. I'm like, where did this come from? She's got a blanket somewhere.
That's really special.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I actually had a Boston that lived with me for quite a while, Topper.
Oh yeah.
But he actually went to live with their unofficial little sister, who she adores and boots.
Oh my gosh, that dog is like the luckiest dog in America. I wish I was that dog. He goes everywhere.
I love that. Well, you know, it's just clear that you guys are longtime real dog people who love the dogs. That's what got you started. I think a great thing to wrap up with would be, you know, a couple times you've mentioned how, just like right now, how the people have been so wonderful, how the breakfast you did with the Mastiff people at the very beginning. What are some thoughts on how younger professionals in the sport and just newcomers to dogs can be better welcomed in and kept in the sport?
I will tell you this. This has been my experience. I preach this a lot in my own club, is that what I have noticed, and I do not fault anyone for this, however, the older generation tends to work a little bit more where they hold things closer to the chest, a little bit more cloak and dagger, not so open, and tend to have this idea that if they don't keep their knowledge to themselves or to a trusted group, that somehow that knowledge will be used against them. My generation, I think, and the generations younger than me, I believe we're more open, more just wanting everything to be out there. We want to learn, we want to know a lot. So I would say that if we can move past this weird cloak and dagger, this weird secret society thing, and just start being more open and honest, that's where you're going to start hooking people that are in the younger generations, because it is more welcoming. Right. You know, I think honestly, another big thing that kind of hurts is just things are different now. The dollar is different. It's a little bit more expensive for my generation to do this. I'm lucky enough that I have her. This is her hobby. I would not be able to be as involved if this were not the case. But in general, I would say we got to be more open. We need to start realizing that at one point our sport was more popular and maybe we could afford to be a little bit more competitive with one another, but now
exclusive.
Yes, now we can't do that. We need to be more forthcoming. We need to be more open. We need to start welcoming people and just start realizing that I do believe that education is the key to pretty much most problems. You can educate someone, you can eradicate that problem. And I really think that we need to start being more open and generous with our knowledge.
I think that's a great line. Education.
I think just
So
welcoming them, saying hello, good morning. How are you? I like your dog. Congratulations. You know, just being courteous.
Human.
Yeah.
Communicative. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's so great. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for sharing with us today. It's really impressive what you guys have been able to do as a family and dogs. And I think that's just such a great thing to showcase, that this is something that goes beyond a job or just a singular hobby, but has really kind of colored your entire life as a family. I think that's really beautiful.
Thank you.
It is our passion.
Thank you to the Canine Chronicle.
Yes. Hi,
Everything
Tom.
they've done. Hi, Tom.
Hi.
Yep.
It's our absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.